Picture a dark hall that breathes. Fans push a steady wind. Fiber glows at the edges like embers. Inside the racks, boards studded with chips pull power like a small neighborhood and turn it into vectors and tokens. The surprising part is not the scale. It is the line outside. Research labs, startups, cloud teams, even governments are waiting for time on this hardware. Somewhere between the purchase order and the product demo, an invisible speed limit appears. It is not a benchmark in a slide. It is the mix of who designs the accelerators, who packages them with ultra-fast memory, who stitches them together with high-bandwidth links, and who owns the software everyone already ships. In this cycle, a small group decides the pace for nearly everyone else. Fewer suppliers, tighter supply chains, and a gravitational software ecosystem make GPUs feel less like parts and more like a toll booth. In the next 20 minutes, we will map that toll booth. We will show how a handful of companies set the tempo for AI, why high-bandwidth memory is the new choke point, how CUDA became a moat, and what that means for prices, timelines, and strategy. The setup starts far from any headline about intelligence. Graphics processing units were built to draw pictures. They painted triangles, shaded pixels, and did it all in parallel. That act, simple math, many times at once, turned out to be the exact rhythm deep learning needs. When researchers discovered that neural networks are stacks of matrix multiplies and adds, the GPU stopped being a graphics part and became a general math engine. NVIDIA, in VIHD, leaned into that shift early, creating a programming layer called CUDA, so developers could write once and benefit from kernels tuned to every new chip. That decision mattered the moment models left the lab. Teams could scale without rewriting everything. Around that core, the rest of the stack hardened. Foundries like TSMC, spoken letter by letter, built the wafers. Advanced packaging mounted memory inches from compute. Network fabrics bound thousands of chips into one machine. What makes this relevant now is that demand arrived all at once. Generative tools moved from demos to products. Training clusters got booked out. Inference fleets came online with real users. Every feature that predicts a token adds to the bill. Under that pressure, the question, who sets the speed, became a business question, not a lab curiosity. Beneath the logo, WARS, sits a mechanism both simple and unforgiving. A modern accelerator is a triangle of compute, memory, and interconnect. Compute is the part everyone sees. Thousands of small cores plus units specialized for tensor math. Memory is what keeps those cores fed. High bandwidth memory, or HBM, is the key. Instead of storing weights and activations across distant modules over narrow channels, HBM stacks memory close to the processor on a shared substrate, with buses so wide they feel like highways. Bandwidth per watt jumps. Latency drops. The chip stops waiting. But those stacks are hard to make. They require high-yield memory dies, advanced through-silicon vias, and packaging capacity like TSMC's CoWoS. If HBM yields dip or packaging slots are full, the whole pipeline slows, no matter how elegant the chip design. Interconnect is the third side. Inside a server, links like NVLink move data between accelerators quickly. Across servers, fabrics such as InfiniBand or Ethernet with RDMA decide whether 1,000 chips behave like one or like 1,000. Together, these three decide real performance. Peak teraflops on a spec sheet do not. Layered onto the triangle is software gravity. CUDA offers libraries for dense math, communication, and scheduling that squeeze hardware without the user seeing every trick. Frameworks like PyTorch meet it halfway. Over a decade, an ecosystem formed: compilers, profilers, distributed training stacks, inference runtimes. Every researcher who shipped a paper, every team that built an internal tool added weight. AMD's competing stack, ROCm, ROCm has improved quickly, and cloud-native compilers can now target multiple backends. But switching costs do not show up in a procurement spreadsheet. They show up in timetables and talent. If your team must hit a date, the safest path is the one everyone already knows. That is how a technical choice becomes an economic moat. The story bent at a few decisions that look simple in hindsight and risky at the time. The first was the platform bet. NVIDIA chose to be more than a chip vendor. It invested in a software layer before there was a commercial payoff, and it kept at it across generations. When deep learning exploded, the runway was paved. The second hinge was specialized math hardware, tensor cores that accelerate the exact operations neural networks need. Those units arrived alongside mature libraries, and a feedback loop began. Better hardware enabled larger models. Larger models demanded better hardware. A third hinge was interconnect strategy. Buying Mellanox brought network control in-house, letting engineers tune the path from chip to switch as one system. When your largest customers run tens of thousands of accelerators in lockstep, owning the fabric is leverage. One bottleneck can erase months of hardware progress. Buyers shaped the field too. Hyperscalers had to choose. Do they build their own accelerators and avoid vendor dependence, or do they buy merchant GPUs and move fast? Custom silicon promises long-term control but demands expertise and patience across multiple tapeouts. Merchant GPUs offer performance today, a developer base, and a predictable roadmap, at the cost of exposure to someone else's pricing and supply. Many chose both: in-house chips for targeted workloads, GPUs for frontier training and broad inference. Enterprises faced a parallel choice: chase state-of-the-art models that demand massive fleets, or right-size with smaller models fine-tuned to their domain. The first path can yield leadership and buzz. The second often yields margins and control. Supply chain decisions turned into hard constraints. HBM capacity is not a slider you move in a meeting. Memory vendors like SK Hynix, Samsung, and Micron had to invest years ahead. Packaging capacity is capital-intensive and slow to expand. CoWoS lines cannot be conjured on short notice. Network hardware landed in its own wave of scarcity when clusters scaled. Even power and cooling became part of the oligopoly's shadow. Dense racks pull so many kilowatts that some sites needed new substations and liquid loops. If your facility cannot dissipate heat, it does not matter what chip you buy. In a system this tight, a delay at any link, memory yield, substrate supply, switch lead time, sets the speed limit for everyone downstream. Economically, fewer suppliers plus sticky software equals pricing power. Top-end accelerators climbed in price as demand outstripped supply. Lead times stretched. Backlogs became a scheduling force. Margins pooled upstream where scarcity lived. In cutting-edge chips, HBM, network fabrics, and packaging slots. Chip designers captured gross margin on parts no one else could match. Memory vendors with competitive HBM had windfalls. Networking saw record orders as customers discovered that idle chips are a more expensive problem than expensive switches. Cloud providers faced a delicate calculus. They needed AI services to attract customers, but the cost of scarce hardware could crush unit economics if priced poorly. The responses varied. Some charged by token, which maps to inference cost. Others sold subscriptions or bundled credits, shifting risk. Startups felt it most. In earlier cycles, a small team could rent general compute and compete. In this one, access to accelerators became the new seed money. Some companies raised capital just to secure capacity. Others found an angle with smaller models and sharp engineering. A few traded equity for compute credits and a place in someone else's queue. Competition did not vanish, but it became path-dependent. AMD's accelerators pushed memory capacity and interconnect bandwidth, courting customers willing to invest in ROCm and in portability. Intel's Gaudi line offered a different price-performance point, particularly for training setups where software support was sufficient and network economics worked. Cloud-native chips, like Google's TPUs, competed effectively inside their own services and gave their owners negotiation leverage. These alternatives tightened spreads and reduced single-vendor risk, even as the incumbent kept a lead in developer mindshare and system breadth. Downstream, the effects became geographic. Regions with abundant power and cool climates attracted huge clusters. Municipalities weighed water use and grid load against jobs and tax revenue. Universities adjusted curricula toward systems engineering and model ops. The oligopoly's choices, what to build, how to price, where to ship, rippled into maps, budgets, and policy. The modern echoes are loud. Training today looks like a logistics operation for math. Thousands of accelerators must act like one. That makes interconnect, topology, and orchestration first-order choices. Teams now design their model graphs to match fabric realities, not only theory. Inference is a different animal. It cares about latency and cost per token. Memory capacity and decoder efficiency dominate. Tricks like quantization, sparsity, and speculative decoding matter as much as raw flops. Routing easy prompts to small models and escalating only the hard ones, model cascades, saves dollars without visible quality loss when tuned well. Mixture of experts' architectures activate subsets of a network per token, stretching limited memory and compute. Everywhere, software becomes leverage. The team that understands kernels, memory bandwidth, and communication patterns can turn last year's hardware into this year's advantage, which is a quiet way to push back against a hardware-driven speed limit. Policy sits in the frame. Export controls shape who can buy which accelerators. That affects not just governments, but also cloud region design and supply commitments. Sovereign AI programs, national clusters built to keep data and capability at home, create parallel demand with political timetables. Procurement rules and public financing change incentives. A single license can move millions of dollars and months of schedule. The oligopoly adapts with product SKUs, regional partnerships, and service models that thread the needle between regulation and growth. It is tempting to reduce this to a villain story. Fewer vendors, higher prices, captive customers, case closed. The truth is less cinematic and more operational. Concentration arose because deep tech problems rewarded long bets, vertical integration, and patient software work. A decade-long push on CUDA, a smart move on networking, and a willingness to fund risky packaging and optic choices created a system that works at scale. At the same time, concentration carries real costs. Single supplier risk is not academic when your launch window is 1 quarter wide. The software moat that creates stability also slows genuine alternatives, and the memory wall is stubborn. As models grow, moving data becomes more expensive than math. If HBM and packaging cannot grow as fast as appetites, the speed limit tightens no matter which logo sits on the board. From this mess of constraints and leverage, a usable playbook emerges. Start by asking a blunt question. What is your real need? Peak capability or consistent throughput? If you need the frontier, plan early and treat supply as strategy. Secure capacity with partners, not just purchase orders. Co-design the cluster so your topology, model parallelism, and training schedule match the fabric and the power you will actually have. If you do not need the frontier, push efficiency hard. Smaller models, better data, retrieval that keeps facts out of weights, and inference tricks that cut tokens per answer reduce your exposure to scarce parts. Treat software as a multiplier. The team that knows how to keep chips fed, overlap communication with compute, keep batches full without blowing up latency, cache what repeats, will win on yesterday's hardware over a competitor with newer boards and sloppy kernels. Diversify where it counts. Blended fleets reduce single-vendor risk. If you can run on 2 hardware stacks, you gain negotiation leverage and resilience. Do the work to make your models portable at the runtime and compiler layer. It pays back when supply tightens. Make memory your first design constraint. Ask for every model where the HBM will come from and what packaging capacity your vendor relies on. Do not build a plan on wishful slots. On the networking side, pick a fabric and commit. InfiniBand gives you a proven path at scale. Ethernet evolves fast and can win on cost and ubiquity. What matters most is discipline, topology, cabling, and buffer planning that avoid idle flops. Finally, incorporate policy into product. If export rules could shift, spread clusters across regions in ways that keep your roadmap intact under more than one scenario. Zoom back to the hall with breathing racks. The promise here was to show how a small group sets the speed limit for nearly everyone else and what you can do about it. You have seen the gears. Compute without HBM is a sports car on bald tires. Packaging is the on-ramp. No slot, no shipment. Fabrics and orchestration decide whether 1,000 chips sing or cough. Software gravity pulls workloads toward CUDA because it saves time, not because alternatives cannot work. Fewer suppliers and sticky ecosystems mean pricing and availability are not simple market curves. They are strategy curves. That is the shape of an oligopoly in a deep tech industry. There are honest limits and critiques to this framing. Calling it an oligopoly can hide the fact that adjacent innovation moves the frontier even when the leading vendor does not. New attention algorithms cut memory traffic. Better compilers shrink kernels and improve cache reuse. Smarter quantization and routing beat brute force. On the supply side, HBM scaling will not be linear forever. Packaging will change. Memory, near compute ideas may bend the curve. Cloud providers will keep investing in their own silicon, sometimes to run inside, sometimes to sell outside. Governments will tug the map through policy, and users will keep rewarding whoever delivers reliable, useful answers at the lowest cost per token, regardless of whose logo is on the die. The speed limit is real today. It is not eternal. If you run a team in this environment, take away 3 simple habits. Define what good means for your users in tokens, latency, and accuracy before you shop hardware. Build a routing plan that sends easy work to cheap paths and reserves expensive models for hard cases. Instrument everything. If you cannot see utilization, cache hits, P95 and P99 latencies, and cost per 1,000 tokens by region and by model, you are flying with the lights off. Those habits will matter on any stack, under any vendor, at any scale. We began with a hall that breathes and a line outside. The question was who sets AI's speed limit? Today, it is set where compute meets memory, where packaging meets yield, where fabrics meet orchestration, and where software meets deadlines. A few companies sit at those crossings and charge a toll. Your job is not to wish the toll away. It is to choose the roads where the toll buys the most and to build detours where it does not. If this episode helped you see the levers you control and the ones you must plan around, stay with us. On Incentive Atlas, we break complex money and technology systems into decisions you can act on. Tell me in the comments where the speed limit hits you hardest: HBM, packaging, fabric, or software, and what we should unpack next to help you move faster.